Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today's card, as usual, is going to be a fun one. And for this, I know what I want to be the focal point, but I need to build up some background too. And I'm going to do that using a pretty plain and simple stamp, but this is the Ballerina. This is actually Ballerina 3. There are Ballerina 1, Ballerina 2, and Ballerina 3, and they're all just in different positions, so depending on what you're looking for in a stamp, but these are really gorgeous, and this is going to be for a specific little birthday that I have coming up. So I'm just sort of figuring out where it's going to go, how much room I need, what it's going to look like. But as I said, background first, and I have this elegant diamond from Spellbinders. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous big background set. Now there are 5 stamps in this set. There's a few sentiments, 4 sentiments, and then obviously this big gorgeous background one. There is enough of the photopolymer that it sort of sticks together really nicely, and it's not going to be misshapen. So I was a little bit wondering about how that would go, but this works really well. I'm popping this in my stamping platform because I'm also not sure about a couple of different elements of the background. So we're going to try some different versions. Now, I can imagine having some real fun with this one, and I'm going to try some different techniques coming up in another video with this background stamp that are going to get a little more complex. But today we are going to keep it relatively simple because, as I said, this is just the background and we want to have a little bit going on, but not too much. I'm using my anti-static powder bag. This is pretty important with a fine stamp like this. This has got quite a lot of detail, quite a lot of lines to it. Then I'm using some VersaMark, just a sticky embossing ink, stamping it down, and the first one I'm going to try is just some gold embossing powder. The cardstock that I'm using for my card base today is the Vanilla Malt from Fawn, and I just thought that that would be a little bit less stark white than a white card base. I am really in this sort of Vanilla Malt mood at the moment for my card bases. I like this shade, I like the sturdiness of the cardstock, and I do like how it ink blends as well, which is all good things when it comes to a card base. So I am going to quickly run my heat gun over top of this. I am moving my heat gun around a bit so that I don't get any warping at all. The cardstock holds up really well to that as well. Then for this one, when I'm stamping here directly onto my card base, I do just put a little bit of mint tape or just low-tack tape, and I just roll a little bit up and put it in the middle just so that the card lays nice and flat. This one I'm going to try just a plain black stamped background because I wasn't sure of all of my other colours at the moment, which is typical for me. I never have any of these cards planned out. This is just me making it up as I go along. I have never ever, I don't think I've ever pre-made a card and then sort of done it on video for you guys. I just do them. This is the first time I'm making all of the cards that you guys get to see. So yeah, that's why I do multiples, or I'm just not sure, and I'm okay with that because my kids happily use up our card bases and all sorts in their little card making stash too. Now this die set here is the Modern Ovals from Spellbinders. Now I picked this up recently kind of to challenge myself. I thought this would be a fun one for lots of different things. Obviously if you sort of cut the top third off, it looks like a rainbow, to me at least, so I could use it for that. I also think this is a really interesting focal point. I know that you can also make hearts and things out of these. There's lots of really interesting ideas, so I'm going to delve into these, but first of all, I'm going to use them just for the background, or what we're going to stamp the ballerina on. So I cut out one size in some plain white cardstock, and then I also did it in the Vanilla Malt because at this point, again, I still was not sure what I wanted to do. So I'm going to stamp the ballerina in some VersaFine Onyx black ink. It's the same ink that I used to stamp the background. I like this one because VersaFine inks do fine detail really, really well, I find, and also I know that it is going to stamp beautifully and crisply. So that is why I'm going with that. Although, because I'm going to be doing some work with these images, because we are actually going to build this up and make a little bit of a 3D, a few layers coming out of this gorgeous ballerina too. Now, I do know that a ballerina is quite specific, but I hope that you can apply this to other things. So, for example, if you were doing a butterfly, you might be able to layer up their wings. If you were doing a flower, you could choose some of the petals, and if you were doing a bird, you could choose one of their wings or some of their tail feathers or one of their feathers. And so just apply this to whatever you choose to create as your focal point. So for this, I am taking some copy paper. Now this is just really thin printer paper, plain and simple, and I really just need little pieces for this. This is why I'm just ripping little bits. Any sort of thin scrap paper is going to work for this, but if you don't want to do the scrunching, then I guess you could use any cardstock at all. Now I'm going to keep this fairly simple at this point. I'm looking for a red and I don't have my red, so once I find them, I have got some candied apple, some mustard seed and some salty ocean, and I'm going to do the most simple rainbow that you can get by just adding these three colors, and then of course when the yellow and the red are combined to make orange, and then the blue and the yellow are going to combine to make green. Very simple, but I have a very small space to work with here, so I didn't really have the opportunity to go on and, you know, make purple and all these lovely things. It really was just a case of I wasn't sure which colors I wanted to go with. So this is option number 2 here. I'm just doing plain old pink, but I'm going to do a light pink first, and then I want some texture. I want some, you could actually use, I wanted to use fabric. I wanted to use some tulle to create her tutu, her skirt that she is wearing, but I didn't have any on hand, so this is my next best option. I am scrunching this paper. I am getting all the wrinkles in there, and I am working to get really good wrinkles. So there is no, obviously, rhyme or reason, just scrunch away, and I'm just truly scrunching till I'm happy. Then I'm going to take a slightly darker layer of pink ink and go over top, and I'm just going lightly, and that is going to catch the top of all the wrinkles. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can kind of see it in real life very clearly, but you can catch all of the wrinkles. Now I'm just going to wrinkle up the rainbow, and this just gives a fabricy textured effect. You really don't need to do this stage if you don't want to. You can keep it absolutely plain, but you'll see why I did it further towards the end. Now I'm taking my ballerina again, and this is where we're going to start our layering, because I'm going to stamp her. I really only need her tutu, her skirt, and so I'm just trying to get that roughly so I get all of the colors there, and then I'm going to do the same on the pink. You do not need 2 of these, although you could absolutely layer up more and more layers. As I said, decisions are just not my forte this morning, so I'm just going to keep doing a couple of different options. Now at this point, I add some clear embossing powder, and I am going to really build up the layers with this, because this is going to be part of creating some stability and some texture and dimension in her tutu. So I really just dip and go. If you dip fast enough after heating it, then you will get the embossing powder just to stick without having to add in any of the ink again. But if you prefer to, you can let it dry, then add more ink, and then add the powder that way. It doesn't really matter. This is just sort of a cheats way, and you can see I've got big thick amounts of it there, and I want this to be really glossy, really thick, really dimensional, because this little tutu is going to really give some oomph to the gorgeous focal point. Now you can see there is lots of shine, and it's a little bit hard to see the dimension, but that will come. I am going to fussy cut out these little ballerina tutus, the skirts. They are not tricky at all to fussy cut, sorry. But as I said, remember that you can do this with any focal point, any owls or birds or flowers or bees, bumblebees and their wings, and there's always an element that you can pop up, that you can layer, that you can make dimensional, and it really just brings something more to the image. Now I'm going to quickly, I have a little bit of spun sugar distress oxide ink here on an acrylic block, and I am going to quickly just watercolor in a little bit on the top of her leotard, and then I will add a little bit onto her ballet shoes, and then of course her beautiful hair and bun as well. I thought I would do that in a little bit of yellow ink, so blondish here. I am somewhat using the colors that I know the recipient of this card what she looks like and her outfit, so it's all just going to, that's why I'm choosing these colors, but it doesn't really matter. I am also going to add a very light wash on her tutu, just because you will be able to see underneath the dimension in certain places too. So remember that although they might not be, when people tilt the card, they might not be able to see perfectly underneath, but we don't want it to just look like really plain and untouched under there, so I always add a little bit of pink too. It's definitely not in your face with the colouring, it's just pretty delicate sort of, layer to add there. Right, we are just going to quickly create from the master layouts too, and I have a Catherine Poole stamp sets here, birthday one. It's just the perfect size, happy birthday. I'm going to stamp this on a banner from the master layouts too, and that is really, really quick and simple. This is on some white cardstock, so it's really going to pop off the page. Then I have two different sizes of the modern ovals here. So the one that I decided to go with was going to be the vanilla malt cardstock, is the one that the Ballerina is on. Then I'm going to use some glue and lay that onto the white cardstock, and I just cut one layer bigger for the white cardstock, and then from there I'm going to pop that layer up from our background. So everything is fairly color coordinated and fairly similar here, and I don't think this comes together right until the very last second, because I absolutely love the difference that the tutu makes. It's amazing. So if you take off the release paper of your foam tape, of course you are able to get it around corners and bends very, very easily, rather than if you keep the release tape on, it will be a bit trickier. I like the background that this created, those gorgeous just focal point right in the middle, and actually I quite like these ovals because I think it does create a really nice focal point, better than I was expecting, and it fits of course the ballerina shape just perfectly. Then I will add my little sentiment to go right down the bottom, and then wait for this part where we add the tutu. This is my absolute favourite. But you'll have to let me know in the comment section down below which one you would have chosen, because I probably could have gone for either. So here is the pink tutu, and then of course we have the rainbow, the brightly coloured one. So at this point, which one would you have gone with? I wasn't sure, but I think just because I want to keep the colours really plain and simple, I'm going to go with the pink one. I think the rainbow one is very bright and gorgeous, and I do still love it a lot. But the pink one is for today. So I do add some liquid glue there, and I'm also going to add a little piece of double-sided tape just right up the top, because that is where it sort of sits the flattest, and that will help adhere this in place. The rest of it is very, very textured, and so the liquid glue is going to help that sort of really all stay in place, even though not all of the points are touching. So this is some gorgeous, gorgeous dimension. This skirt, this tutu is stunning, and I got some really lovely comments from people that I showed this card to, so I am happy with the outcome of this one. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and you can apply this technique to whatever card making you are doing at the moment. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!